Welcome to the Relationship Cycle with Jorge and Nelsa, where we discuss dating and other significant relationships. And we're back, everybody. Jorge, it's almost the end of summer. Hot girl summer is about to be over. Hot boy summer is about to be over. Do you have your warm and snuggly boo for the cold days of winter?
I don't think so.
Oh, it's about this time people start scrambling, right? You've been out there enjoying your singledom all summer long, and then it gets cold. So, but tonight we're talking about ghosting. We're right here almost ready for Halloween. I know the stores certainly are. All the corn candy and pumpkin candy you can eat. So we wanted to talk about ghosting. And, first of all, what is it? I'm sure there's some listeners out there that probably don't know what we're talking about, but then there's several who probably do for more reasons than one. So what about you? What do you think ghosting is, Poppy?
Ghosting is when you have established communication with somebody and then that communication ceases to exist.
I love it. And that sounds like a very technical definition. But I think for those in layman terms, they just drop out, they disappear for no apparent reason into thin air. You thought you had a great time with them. And if I sound personal, it is because I have been ghosted and I was like, what in the world happened? And it was jarring. Like it really was jarring because it felt like I had such a great date with the person. We really clicked, we connected, just felt like there was so much chemistry. And the next day, I don't even know if it was the next day. It might have still been like the same evening. Excuse me, like going out. And I tried to call back just to say what a great time I had, whatever. And it kept going to voicemail. And I didn't understand what that meant at the time because it had not happened before like that. And when it kept going to voicemail, I was just like, okay, did something happen with the phone? Maybe, something's happened. They can't get to the phone. Maybe they're at work, whatever. But it just kept going to voicemail. And for several days, I kept trying back until finally it was the busy signal type of thing as opposed to going straight to voicemail. And I will never forget how lost I felt in those moments where I thought we had really, connected. There would be more dates. There would be more interaction. When you feel like you have a good connection you've made with somebody, like I couldn't help but to project. I mean, really, truly, I could not help but to project. And this wasn't like we just talked the day of the date. We had talked for weeks prior to meeting for the date. So it wasn't even like, something where it was just a fly by night. We just met and had a date and that was it.
Right.
There had been some build up. And it felt like somebody had literally pulled the rug out from under me and I was just tripping and falling. And I was tripping because I was like, what the hell? What did I do? And I never got to get that answer from the guy. And so I finally had to come to terms with myself that I felt like there were things that he said to me that I needed to hear as a woman because I was still sort of in a recovery state from, other relationships that had gone south. And this person really made me feel confident again. They made me feel beautiful again when I just wasn't in a place to generate that for myself. And it was almost like a messenger, if you will. He came and gave me the message that I was still beautiful. I was still attractive. I was still desirable. And I had to just leave it at that. I didn't ever get any more communication ever. And that was probably, maybe like a year and a half or so ago, 2 years almost. So what about you? Have you ghosted women? Or
Oh, I have. I absolutely have.
oh my God.
I mean, listen, it's the nature of the beast.
Okay, why?
There's different degrees of ghosting, right?
Okay.
like I remember I had a woman, like, this was like the first couple of conversations, and she was already trying to like hustle me for money. So
Mm,
I'm like, you know what? I'm not even going to entertain this. And I just stopped talking to her.
gotcha.
So,
And that seems very justified to me. When people come in with ulterior motives, and maybe it's not justified, but in my world, when you feel like somebody is taking advantage or trying to take advantage of you, and they're not in it to be in it for the right reasons, then I could see, cutting the plug. But what about somebody who genuinely seemed, have you ghosted anybody who genuinely seemed interested in you and in building something?
no, no. If
Mm-hmm.
it's now, when I say genuine, I'm talking about, so this is I have a very interesting approach.
Mm-hmm.
So my approach is this: if I go on one date with a woman, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for whatever reason, it wasn't great or it didn't feel amazing or whatnot, then I don't feel that I need to give a give her an explanation as to why it didn't go well. Now, if she reaches out and she's like, "Hey, I'd like to see you again," or "Hey, what did you think?" or blah blah blah, then I'll say, "Hey, I don't think we were a good fit," or "I don't think we're
Mm-hmm.
looking for," I'll at that point she's asking me for my input. So I don't have an issue doing that. Although even doing that can get hairy because I've done that a couple of times and that didn't go smoothly. so
Right. Sometimes it
so
can be
that
too much, right?
I mean, so that's the thing. It's like, like you want to be honest, but you also, you don't want to be cruel. And sometimes when you send something via text, it can come off pretty harsh.
True. And you don't know the.
Um, like it can come off very harsh, and sometimes you're not even trying to be rude or harmful. You're just kind of making a point. So I do feel that, yeah, in a general sense, ghosting is not something that I would advocate, although sometimes I do think that it can be warranted and justified.
Okay. Okay. I can dig it. And I have to say, even though that particular instance was rough, I have ghosted as well. So I
Yeah,
can't
and listen,
really
and
be.
to me, I just chalk it up as, hey, this is the nature of the beast. This is the nature of
Yeah.
dating, in my opinion. Now, I do have now one example that happened to me from a lady that I had probably been talking for almost 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
We went out on 3 dates, and they were all great, for at least from what she told me and
Right.
from what I felt.
Right.
Then after the third time that we spent time, because of what she traveled for work, so she was a very busy woman, and she's a single mom, so she's
Mm-hmm.
very very busy. And the few times that we had plans to get together, something came up with her son, and we couldn't meet up, and we couldn't make those plans happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I almost felt that she was testing me to see how I was going to respond to things not working out my way as far as seeing her. And I played it cool. I was like, all right, she's a single woman. She has a son. I get it. So I played it cool, and I'm like, hey, we'll figure it out. I did not feel that she was pulling my chain, so to speak, or I didn't think she was bullshit me, right?
Right. Right.
Um, so then we still kept communication. There was still pretty genuine interest of maybe something more than just friends. That was made pretty evident from the conversations that we have had, from the community. I mean, we texted probably for, I don't know, a couple of months straight every
Mm-hmm.
day. So, and we basically shared a lot of intimate and a lot of vulnerable things about each other.
Mm-hmm.
And then she ghosted me for a week.
Mm.
And I had not done anything. Like, I had not, you know, done anything that I hadn't done the months prior.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So then so after a week, I gave into the pressure, and I literally sent her, hey, this is literally, I literally sent her a text, hey, is this the part where we ghost?
Ooh.
And I sent her a gif of a ghost.
Ooh.
So I sent her that, And then she replied back and she was like, no, she had just been busy. And then I replied back something else. And then I never heard from her again.
Wow.
And then at that point, I stopped. I took the hint. I was like, okay, clearly she no longer wants to continue communicating or even trying to plan to meet up. And here's the one thing that I've learned from all this, and not just this example, but in other examples. Sometimes it's not you,
Right.
but a lot of people put the onus on themselves that they did something wrong or that something is not right with them.
Right.
But in reality, we need to flip the script and realize that sometimes it's the other person that's not ready for what you are looking for or for what you are offering.
Well, and I was looking at some of our feedback off of the post about ghosting out on Facebook. And some people said, it's a sign that you're immature, you're not ready for, a real commitment. But I do challenge that a little bit because I think um, sometimes people are overwhelmed, and that has been my case. Oftentimes where I felt like I didn't really want to hurt the person, but they were bringing so much at me up front at one time that I just could not at that time handle it. Um, and again, maybe that is immature, cowardly. Maybe I needed to go into therapy sooner or stay longer or whatever. But um, my my ability to handle as much emotion as they were throwing at me as quickly as some people do, and I'll put that in as a caveat because I do think sometimes some people are so ready to be in a relationship,
Right.
so gung ho that they're not reading the room you know, and I know me, I have said, oftentimes I'm not ready for this, I'm not ready for that, or, I'm just coming out of this, I'm still in the process of healing. I try to be as transparent as I can, but, that's still no guarantee that because I send a message a certain way, that the message will be received by the other person the way I intended it. And I feel like sometimes when I've given those sort of hints, and the person is still coming on with all they've got in terms of, um, full force intensity type emotion at me, and I'm
Right.
just really not in a place to receive it, or you're not the person I really want to receive it from sometimes, um, then I did resort to, okay, I've told him, now I can't, like, then nothing's happening here. And I will say, for some people, it's either that very intense kind of emotion or people who showed up and had nothing to give me. We're having the same conversation over and over every time we speak. Hey, what you doing? Hey, beautiful. Hey, queen. How was your day? And we never get past that point to where we talk about anything really serious. We're not sharing anything really intimate. Um, we're just kind of every day running that same old polite social chit chat. And after a while, I'm just like, well, obviously you're not interested in anything past this. And I got more to me than this that I want to share. And so I do try though. I have just kind of cut loose and blocked the number, but most of the time I do try to go um, step down. Like, hey, you're really nice, but I'm not really interested, or you know, thank you for reaching out, but I'm not really ready to settle down, or whatever the case may be.
Right.
The only other time that I've ghosted is somebody who made me feel unsafe.
Mm.
Um, and I did do that because I felt like um, the vibe was just so weird and so wrong. And I was like, I can't entertain this person's energy any longer. And
Right.
in fact, I ghosted them twice. I did it one time, and for whatever reason, they managed to find my number and call me from a different number, which was really creepy to me a little bit. That you would go to those lengths to try to get in touch with me after I've basically blocked you, and you were still trying to get in touch with me. And
Oof.
the second time kind of creeped me out even more. Um, because I felt like, you know, after I kind of got the message that I got my number blocked and the person was no longer interested, then I'm like, okay, I got to take this L. It's sometimes I think people take it too hard with the ghosting when it happens to them because of ego. Um,
Yeah.
I don't want to be with anybody who doesn't want to be with me. And that's my personal feeling. You know, I can't convince you to give me another chance, or let's try it one more time, or let's keep on, seeing if we can hit oil when, you know, we're out in the middle of a desert and we don't have any conversation. We can't ever seem to get together. Nothing is working our way. So I think for me, getting out of ego is one of the things you have to do in dating, because ghosting is going to happen with the numbers. It's just a numbers game sometimes too. We've talked about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is that as people, we have to stop putting people that power and that responsibility that we need closure from them. Sometimes you need to take it upon yourself to put closure on the situation. And think about it like this. Sometimes people are doing you a favor, because
Hmm.
if this person is not communicating well with you now, what do you think is going to happen in a relationship?
Right. And so,
Like, what do you think? Imagine
yeah,
trying to have these important and deep conversations when you are in a relationship with a person that doesn't know how to communicate or doesn't like to have those tough conversations. Imagine that.
yeah. And Diana Wilkes writes, rejection is hard to give and to receive. And then she talks about a situation that um, happened where the person continued to pursue, and she had to block the person. And
Oof.
her comment was, "It's a damned if you do or damned if you don't sort of situation." So, um, I, you can try it in many different ways, but really, truly, you don't owe an explanation to people
You don't.
that
And
you're
that's
trying
the
to get.
thing.
Yeah.
And that's why I always say, like, hey, look, ghosting is a case by case basis, because some cases are warranted. Like, there were a lot of women that replied back to our posts, and a lot of them mentioned that, hey, this guy was either not respecting boundaries,
Hmm.
or he was being creepy, or being disrespectful. So if all those things are already showing themselves early on, then I understand why a woman would want to ghost, because you don't want to be dealing with that from the jump, and at any point, but especially early on. So at that point, you're pretty much making it easy for somebody to ghost you. So I understand why a woman would
Yeah.
be like, hey, this guy is just giving me creepy vibes, or he is just not respecting the boundaries that I'm setting. So I'm cutting this out now from the root.
And I'm gonna tell you something else. And I want to talk really not so graphic, but I want to be very transparent with women who are out there online dating, men too, because it's not just men who do this. I've heard, but women as well are doing this to men. I don't.
Oh, I've gotten ghosted numerous times
Well,
at all levels.
not the ghosting, but there are people when you start going online looking for matches or whatever, people who will send you inappropriate pics, who will quickly jump to sex talk with you.
Yeah.
They make it really clear what their intent is from the jump, and I have no problem ghosting those people. If I've made it clear that I want to get to know you, and all you're doing is sending me pictures of your body parts, and all you can talk to me about is sexual pursuits, or what you want to do or what you hope to do with me. I find that very, very, it's past rude. Um, it's very disrespectful to me if I'm not giving you any sort of, you know,
Green light vibe.
I I didn't say yes. I didn't say that's what I'm here for too. I don't go along with that nonsense. And then you are just upfront and consistently giving me those sorts of images or those sorts of conversations. I'll just be like, delete. I'm done. Block. I'm done.
And listen, I listen. I have had those conversations with female friends that happens to them a lot, and I'm like, look, technology is a beautiful thing nowadays. You got to use that block button. Like, why
Hmm.
are you even in there? Once you see that it's going there, you either need to check the person
Hmm.
or you block them. But why get into this back and forth debate with somebody who's not respecting your boundaries from the very
From the
beginning of
very
communication. Like
right,
that is where I do have to put some onus on women to be like, okay, well, block the guy.
right,
But
and
some
don't do
women have a
that.
tough time doing that because the man might be very attractive, or there's something about him that
Oh,
they
just
just,
girls.
they like that attention, but they don't like how they're getting that attention, but
Hmm.
they appreciate some of that attention that this man brings. But that's where you have to establish a standard and a certain level of respect that, you know what, this is not what I'm going to tolerate. So if you're not going to respect me and respect the boundaries, then
Hmm.
we can't continue moving forward communicating on this level. And then at that point, you either block, disengage from the conversation, or ignore.
Well, okay, let's talk about we've talked about the very beginning from, meeting people online or meeting people however you're out there doing it this day and age. What about in a relationship? Have you ever experienced ghosting within a relationship with someone and, communication just dries up?
I have not. I will say this. If it is like, I have a couple of rule of thumbs with this whole ghosting stuff. Like, to me, if I've been out if I've been out on 3 dates or more with you, and I feel that either it's not going anywhere, or it's not what I'm looking for, or we're just not a good fit, then I think that does deserve a certain level of conversation and closure. Or if we have a if we're having intimacy, right? And it's a consistent intimacy thing, then I do think that a conversation is warranted, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But if we're just like chatting on a messenger or on an app and we've never met, then to me, that I have low value or low interest in the conversation. So if somebody ghosts me, I don't take it personal. And if I ghost them, they shouldn't take it personal either. So that's where I kind of tell apart, when, as far as the degrees of ghosting. Like, if it's somebody that I have spent a month or more of my precious time, then yeah, I shouldn't just disappear. I should at least explain to them, hey, this is why I don't think we should continue moving forward or hanging out because of XYZ or whatever reason. And then, of course, if there's intimacy involved, I think
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of where I draw the line. But if somebody that I've never even met, and I don't know, I match with them on Bumble, and then they just stop talking to me, I don't take it personal because I've never met the person. So I don't know what they got going on, you know?
Yeah, and sometimes people do make matches that are um, maybe more compatible than the early ones that they, because it's
Absolutely.
numbers game, guys. Like people aren't just matching with you. If you're out there and new to online dating, people are not just matching with you at one time, and so they may end up following a line of conversation with someone for a few weeks that kind of dries up, or they hit the wall when they meet each other and the chemistry is not the same, and then when they pick back up, maybe with people that they matched with previously, then it's sort of a, I tried out this person, but that didn't really turn into anything. So I'm back in the flow. And that's something that I've learned as well that, oh, so now we're going to come back. I guess all your choices, you know, just kind of dried up for you. Now you're back. So I've had to check my ego in that, how many times did you follow a different line of conversation after you matched with, two or three people, especially in the early days, because it's a numbers game, and they get you, making you feel like you're at the slots winning with all those. It's a match, or you feel like, wow, I got like four matches. But after a while, it's about who are you really, really compatible with. Uh, is it just you looking at the surface with the person saying where they work and what they look like and what they enjoy doing? But when you get into the conversation, if you can't really talk to the person and get past the we the WYD uh sort of chats every night, then if you don't know how to say I'm not interested, then sometimes you do resort to ghosting, because guess what? Even after 2 weeks, I still don't know you any better than I did the first night I matched. So,
And don't get me wrong, I do think that small talk does play a role in the
mhm,
very beginning, at least.
right, absolutely.
But then you got to get past the small talk.
Right.
I'm not one, and I'm my opinion on small talk is, look, it's necessary, but once we get past that, then I want to learn about the individual. I want to learn about the person.
Hmm.
But I'm not one that's gonna what are you doing you to death. You know what I mean? Because I know that that's not gonna tell me anything about you to really get to know who I'm dealing with or what you're about. So I prefer more intellectual, deep conversations. But at the same time, as a man, I like a woman that's a good conversationalist, because I don't think that the man has to be the one that carries the conversation every time. Like, if I'm talking, like, there's been times where I'm chatting with a woman and then it's like, yeah, or sure, or I don't know. Then
Yep.
it's like,
One
well,
word responses.
yeah. Then it's like, yo, we're not having a conversation here. It's more like an interview at this point.
Not a good
Like,
one.
there's got to be some back and forth flow
Yeah.
as well. And I feel like oftentimes, at least as a man, I felt that the women that on these dating apps kind of put a lot of pressure on the men to lead the conversation, but at the same time, you have to show involvement and engagement in the conversation as well, so that the man can kind of lead and steer it well. Because if you're giving short answers or close-ended answers, that doesn't really give me a lot to go off.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that both ways. I
And vice versa, I'm sure there's guys who are like, yeah, no, maybe.
think as we get ready to wrap up, Jorge, what is your best advice for moving past ghosting?
I mean, to me, I would look at it as a blessing, because if this is the person that you were trying to bet your wagon on,
Hmm.
and then they're doing this early on, what do you think is going to happen in a relationship?
Mm,
So if this is their behavior, right, in the early stages, what will that look like in a relationship? Because in a relationship, not everything is peaches and creams. There's going to be rough times where you got to have uncomfortable or difficult conversations. So what do you think is going to happen to somebody who maybe doesn't like having difficult conversations? So just imagine that you're putting all this time and effort in someone, they're not reciprocating. Imagine what that would look like in a relationship. So to me, I have learned now. I can tell you that when I first started dating, it was difficult, but now I just either I chalk it up to it's not a good fit, or something that they have going on in their personal life, or it's just bad timing. Sometimes it's literally just timing.
right.
There's been times where I have talked to women where beginning of the year they won't give me the time of day, and then 6 months later I see a completely different side of them. And a lot of it has to do because they moved on from a bad relationship, or they just they were too busy and they had other priorities and dating was on the back burner. So sometimes it's literally just timing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's again, I think we had another viewer, listener rather, who talked about having to ghost somebody who was a very toxic person.
Mm,
They were in the middle of the relationship, and how the person became very obsessed. The ghosting turned the other person, into a stalker. They made it went to the extreme of ego, not accepting the fact that this person wanted to move on after she had already explained it multiple times that she did not want to be involved with them anymore. And I think for those cases, I really wanted to speak to that, where either the person is being very verbally abusive, or, again, coming back, block, um, and then report, especially on the apps. When you get people who are being verbally abusive to you,
absolutely.
making
Hmm.
threats against you, you need to take that seriously. That's nothing to play with. Most most people, most healthy people, may not like the ghosting, but they're not going to go to those lengths.
And Nelsa, just I want to point out something that people can use, specifically the ladies. There's apps
Mm.
out there that you can create a phone number. So I know women that create fake phone numbers via these apps, and
Yes.
then they'll share the phone number once they want to maybe take the conversation off those dating apps. So
Right.
that way, if you do use this app and you give this phone number to this individual, and then once it gets to the phone number level and he starts to act weird or creepy,
Mm-hmm.
then you can block him and you don't have to use your real number. So just the FYI, because I know a lot of women deal with this sometimes where they're no longer interested in the guy, but they have their phone number now. And now this guy starts getting weird, like you mentioned earlier, and he starts still reaching out to you from a different phone number. So that way, if you use these apps
Yeah.
that help you create these,
Didn't-
second phone numbers,
mm,
you're not giving out your real phone number. So if you do have to block or move on from the conversation, your real number is not compromised.
Absolutely. And I think that's an excellent thing. Also, there are services on some of the dating apps. I'm familiar with Tinder. They use like Moonlight, or, some of those things where if you feel like you're going to get ready and go on a date with this person, and you don't have family, or I always create a safety plan for myself, going out on dates, so that other people, I share my location, they know where I am, they know where I'm going, they know the person's face. I've even had um, a date where he was good enough to send me his license. He did not even hesitate to send me his license to, you know ha- for me to have. And I'm not saying that everybody has to go to those lengths, but I am saying you do need to create some sort of safety plan to be able to um, keep your boundary in place. Don't be so quick to give up too much personal information, especially about your finances, about where you live,
Exactly.
uh, about where you work, because those things can. You want to make sure people are earning that trust and not just blindly trusting somebody's facade. And people can go a good long while pretending to be who they tell you they are.
No, some
Uh,
people are listen, some people are professional con artists. And with that, like a lot of cell phones, you can share your location. So you can be out anywhere or on a date or meeting up, someone for a drink or a cup of coffee, and your friends or whoever you decide to share with, they can still see your location.
right.
So I think that's safe practice and something that a lot of people, particularly women, should get in the habit of doing so.
Right. So again, we're talking about ghosting tonight, but in these extreme cases, we just want to make sure that people know, to be safe. And, always, always, even if your phone, um, is cut off for whatever reason, 911 is always um, in effect on your cell phone. So
Absolutely. Like to
right,
me, ghosting's not cool in most cases, but sometimes it's just warranted, damn it.
absolutely. It is a mixed message still, like the beginning, to ghost or not to ghost. That is the question.
But listen, it's the nature of the beast, so that's why I don't get too hung up on it. To me, it's like, hey, if you're out in the dating world, you're gonna be ghosted, and sometimes you're gonna have to ghost people. Everybody's got their reasons and logic, so I don't get too hung up on it.
Yeah,
But sometimes it hurts, but that's okay. It's part of dating.
exactly. Part of relationships. And
Absolutely.
here at the Relationship Cycle, if you have any ideas, story ideas, please email us at Jorge, JORGE, Nelsa, NELSA, at gmail.com to give us your ideas, or you can reach out to us um, via Facebook. We've been doing a lot of that with our um, family out here on the Relationship Cycle. So definitely reach out to us if you have other ideas like this one for show ideas. We really appreciate you guys listening and supporting. And until next time.
Great conversation. Thank you so much. Buenas noches, good people. Thanks for joining us today on the Relationship Cycle with Jorge and Nelsa. Do you have show ideas? Email us at jorgeandnelsa@gmail.com. Follow us on Spotify or anchor.fm for more great shows.